So we've been going over this book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And so we have been going over all of the different love languages. And we went over, the first one was, does anybody remember? Words of affirmation. Absolutely. Saying things that are encouraging. The second one was quality time. Sitting down and being one-on-one with somebody and giving them your full attention. And the third one was receiving gifts. And giving gifts is a language of love. Something that, tangible reminder of someone. And the fourth one that we did last week was acts of service. Yeah, y'all already know them. I'm so proud of you. You know them. And today we're going to talk about the 5th language of love, which is physical touch. You know, we all know that children need to be touched, that babies who are deprived of hugs and being held do not flourish. They fail to thrive. I have a friend who was one in my class in ministerial school, Reverend Lisa Davis, and she adopted 2 children from Russia. And when she sent pictures of those children, they were about between 2.5 and 3 years old, but they had sort of been deprived, and they really looked and acted like they were about 12 to 18 months old. But you know, they brought them home, they loved them, they cuddled them, they fed them, they taught them, when they had psychological problems, they sought help. And today, those girls are graduating from high school, and you don't know that they started out deprived. But that deprivation of touch had stunted their growth, both emotionally and physically. And do you remember when you were a child how much you loved getting a goodnight kiss or a hug? Or the last thing before you went to school, you got a hug, and that was sort of your emotional blanket to carry with you? Can you remember that? I think that for some children, their emotional love language is physical touch, and it becomes even more important when that's their native language, that they get that. But I think research shows that physical touch is important even if it's not someone's primary love language. Even if they need words of affirmation or quality time, they still need those loving hugs and that touch. But you know, those beautiful children like puppies, about 13, they become like cats. Our teens, they don't necessarily think it's so cool to be hugged. And so then you have to be a little surreptitious. And I think with boys, you know, it's things like high fives and a pat on the shoulder or an elbow bump. And with girls, it might be hold hands or, you know, just an affectionate tap. They still need that touch. They just don't think it's cool. But we have to be, as parents and adults, we have to know that they still need that physical touch no matter what the age is. And so as much as they run from us and run from our touch, some way we have to sneak it in. Now there's this thing about physical touch. Are there people you don't want to be touched by? Every one of us has something, but yeah. So physical touch has to be wanted for it to be effective, and certainly in a romantic relationship or marriage, physical touch is very important. When we don't feel touch, we feel unloved, and what is the classic thing? You know, we see it on television when there's a fight. What happens? People withdraw. And we've seen it in our own lives, that instead of somebody coming and giving you a hug or a kiss, they go in the other room, and what do you feel? Empty. You feel a hole. You feel that unloved. universally, touch is important. In a crisis, what is the number one thing that you can do? Touch somebody, hug somebody. And what do we do when we meet somebody? Well, now here at Unity, we hug. So for those of you who are visitors, I'm sorry. If we're too huggy, stick out your hand real quick. You know, when I came to Unity, I was not a hugger. You know, that was sort of foreign to me. And gosh, now I'm
the number one hugger.
Yeah. Oh, well, you know, what are you going to say? But when we walk up to somebody, what's our natural thing to do? We reach out and shake their hands. That is physical touch. We're making a connection. And if you go to shake somebody's hand and they don't shake it, do you feel rebuffed? Uh-huh. In other cultures, sometimes when you meet, it's a hug. In some of the European and South American countries, they hug. And would some of us feel uncomfortable if we met somebody in a business situation and they hugged us? Uh-huh. Our kiss, yeah. Oh, a kiss you on the cheeks. Mm-hmm. And in the Japanese culture, I don't think they do touch. I mean, that's a kind of a no-no.
Japanese does.
So there's a lot of history around and culture around physical touch. Physical touch is throughout the Bible. Did any of y'all have a children's Bible when you were growing up? And was there a picture on the front of that Bible? There was on mine. There was a picture, and what was the picture of? Jesus with all the little children. And parents would bring their children to Jesus, and what did the disciples do? They rebuked them. And Jesus said, don't rebuke them. Let the children come to me. And what did he do? He touched them and he blessed them. Think of all the healings in the Bible. There were a lot of healings in the Bible. There was a blind man and Jesus put mud on his eyes and he got sight. There was a leper and he touched the leper, which was significant in two ways. One, because you weren't supposed to touch a leper. They were not clean. But two, so that shared that love. But two, he get that healing touch. Peter's mother-in-law had a fever, and Jesus laid his hand upon her. There were two blind men, and he touched them. Can you think of any other place that touch was in the Bible?
The woman who touched his garment.
The woman who touched the hem of the garment. That touch, that physical contact, transmitted an energy. And so you and I know when we're by someone that we love and they touch us, there is an energy exchange, there is an energy feeling, and it is fantastic. You know you are loved. You know that you are accepted. Saul was the one who killed all the Christians, and he had on the road to Damascus, he had this encounter with God, and he was blinded. And so later he was with Ananias, and Ananias touched him and restored his sight. And he was Paul in the Bible, who we quote very frequently. A healing touch is part of the Bible. And there are times when people here have a healing need and we touch them. Now, we don't do it without asking. And I know that Ann Bolton is our hall monitor today, but here's Joe Ellen and there's Lloyd, and they do Reiki healing, and they don't necessarily touch. And Jill, I know that there are others in here that do healing touch. Another healing touch. A healing touch is accepted. And when you have a pain in your arm or you have a pain in your knee, what do? You rub it. You rub it, you touch it. Uh-huh. It's a healing thing. It's a way to transmit that energy. Now, after service in this room, we circle the chairs and we have a discussion. And sometimes the discussions are different than other times. Sometimes it's more social, and sometimes it gets pretty deep. And so as we've talked about this, having a love language, that everybody has a love language, and that you might have a partner or a spouse or a friend who doesn't feel loved, that their emotional needs are not being met because their love language is not being spoken to them. In this Sunday school class, it came up with, "But Reverend Beth, you tell me that I'm responsible for how I feel, and they're responsible for how they feel. So why is it my responsibility to speak their love language?" And I was thinking, wow, how do I answer that? And I said, well, if we're spiritually and emotionally mature people, we do fill up our own bucket. But how many of us are all that spiritually and emotionally mature? Aren't we all working on it?
Yes.
I wish I could say that I was 100% spiritually and emotionally mature. I kind of think...
We're not islands.
No.
We're interconnected.
We're not islands. We're interconnected. We need that connection. And as long as we're here on this planet, we're going to have emotional needs. And so love is a choice. And we started out this series saying that the greatest commandment is love God and love your neighbor as yourself. First and second commandment. And how do you love your neighbor? You become aware of their needs. And it is always a choice. It is always a choice. Nobody's going to force you to speak the love language of your loved one. But if you want a happy relationship, this book is filled with examples of where couples repaired their relationship by speaking the language that the other person needed. And Dr. Chapman is very clear in all these places, and even in the last story that he was telling in here, he says you don't say anything about it, you just do it. You try it out. You listen. And when your spouse criticizes you and says you never spend time with me, you never mow the yard, then you're getting a hint about what their love language is. So you and I have choices every day about how to express our love. And so Anne Dubois gave me this wonderful little page that has it's a little cheat sheet about the 5 languages of love: words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. And we have them for you to take home. And for those of you who've not taken the test, we finally did it. We finally typed it out. Now this came from PROFS.com, ProProfs.com, liberally stolen. And if you go, you can do it here on the page, circle the letters, count them up, or you can go to ProProfs.com and take it online, and it will tell you. I did it, and what I will say is that if you do it online, it just tells you what your major love language is. But if you do it here, you might find that you have one predominant one and then one next to that, and that's really good to know. And you know, it's not such a horrible test that maybe you couldn't get your loved person to do it also so that you could find out their love language. If we want to do the commission, love one another, you and I get to make a choice. And so this week I invite you to find a way to love in whatever way you can. And if love languages help, then so be it. And I have a gift copy. Is there anybody that needs this in their life? First hand I saw.